What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors comes face to face with a talk show host who refuses to show basic respect? Well, you're about to witness one of the most uncomfortable television moments ever captured on live television. Harrison Ford, the man who brought us Han Solo and Indiana Jones, walked onto The View expecting a normal promotional interview. Instead, he got something entirely different. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about how this whole situation unfolded. The studio lights were blazing hot that morning as Harrison Ford settled into the familiar chair across from the panel of hosts. He had done this routine hundreds of times before promoting his latest film to audiences across the country. The View was supposed to be just another stop on his press tour, a friendly chat about his career and upcoming projects. But from the moment Joy Behar opened her mouth, it became clear this would be anything but routine. Well, 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 look who we have here. Joy began with that signature smirk of hers. Harrison Ford, the man who made a career out of playing the same character over and over again. The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seat. This wasn't the warm welcome they had rehearsed during the pre-show meeting. Ford's publicist, standing just off camera, felt her stomach drop. She had specifically briefed the producers about keeping the conversation light and professional. Ford's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "I'm sorry, Joy, but I think you might be confusing me with someone else. I've played quite a range of characters throughout my career." "Oh, really?" Joy leaned forward, clearly enjoying herself. "Let's see. You've got the grumpy pilot in Star Wars, the grumpy archaeologist in Indiana Jones, and the grumpy detective in Blade Runner. Seems like a pattern to me." The audience grew quiet, sensing the tension building. This wasn't the playful banter they expected from a morning talk show. Ford glanced at the other hosts, hoping one of them might steer the conversation in a different direction. But they seemed frozen in place. "Joy, I came here to talk about my new film," Ford said, his voice carrying a warning edge. "Perhaps we could focus on that instead of whatever agenda you seem to have today." But Joy wasn't backing down. In fact, she seemed to be warming up. "Agenda? I don't have an agenda. Harrison, I'm just, calling it like I see it. You've been coasting on the same handful of roles for decades. When was the last time you actually challenged yourself as an actor?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Ford had dealt with difficult interviewers before, but this felt personal. This felt like an attack designed to humiliate him on national television. "You know what?" Joy Ford said, his famous calm beginning to crack. "I've been acting for over 50 years. I've worked with some of the greatest directors in cinema history. I've played everything from carpenters to presidents. And I've never once felt the need to justify my career choices to someone who makes a living gossiping on daytime television." The studio fell silent except for the hum of the cameras. Joy's face flushed red, but instead of backing down, she doubled down on her attack. "Gossiping? Is that what you think this is? I'm asking legitimate questions about your career. Questions that your fans deserve answers to, or are you too much of a prima donna to handle a little honest criticism?" Ford stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed through the silent studio like a gunshot. "Honest criticism? Is that what you call this, ambush lady? I've faced down critics who actually knew what they were talking about. You're not even in their league. Sit down, Harrison." Joy snapped, her voice rising. "You don't get to intimidate me just because you're some big movie star. This is my show and I'll ask whatever questions I want to ask." "Your show?" Ford's voice was dangerously quiet. "Now your show is a joke. Joy, you spend your days tearing down people who actually create things, while you contribute nothing but negativity to the world. At least when I play a grumpy character, I'm getting paid to pretend." The other hosts finally found their voices, trying desperately to defuse the situation. But it was too late. The damage was done, and Joy Behar was not about to let Harrison Ford have the last word. "You think you're better than everyone else, don't you?" she fired back. "You think? Because you were in a few successful movies, that gives you the right to look down on the rest of us? Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Ford. Your best days are behind you, and everyone knows it." Ford's hands clenched into fists at his sides for a moment. It looked like he might actually lose his composure completely. The tension in the room was suffocating, and everyone could feel that they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. The silence that followed Joy's brutal comment about Ford's best days being behind him felt like it lasted forever. You could practically hear hearts beating in the studio audience. Ford's publicist was frantically signaling to the producers, but they seemed paralyzed by what was unfolding before their eyes. This wasn't just an awkward interview anymore. This was television history in the making, and not the good kind. Ford slowly turned his head to look directly at Joy, his eyes narrowing with the kind of intensity that had made him famous in countless action scenes. But this wasn't a movie. This was real, and the anger building behind those eyes was genuine. "My best days are behind me," Ford repeated, his voice barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying more menace than if he had shouted, "You want to talk about best days? Joy, let's talk about yours. When exactly were those? When you were bombing on stage doing stand-up comedy that nobody found funny? Or maybe when you were desperately clinging to whatever relevance you could find by attacking people who actually accomplished something with their lives?" Joy's mouth fell open. She had clearly expected Ford to either back down or storm off by now. I hadn't anticipated that he would fight back with such precision and venom. "How dare you?" she stammered, her usual confidence cracking. "You don't know anything about my career or my life." "I know enough," Ford shot back, still standing over the panel, like a judge delivering a verdict. "I know that you built whatever career you have by tearing other people down. I know that you hide behind this panel of women, thinking it gives you some kind of shield to say whatever cruel thing pops into your head. And I know that deep down, you're probably miserable, because happy people don't spend their time trying to make others feel small." The other hosts were practically cowering in their chairs now. This had gone so far beyond anything they had ever experienced on the show. Whoopi tried to jump in with a joke to lighten the mood, but her words died in her throat when both Ford and Joy turned to glare at her simultaneously. "You think you can psychoanalyze me?" Joy's voice was shaking now, though. Whether from anger or something else was hard to tell. "You don't know the first thing about me, you arrogant has been. Ford actually laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Joy, I made more money last year than you'll see in the rest of your lifetime. My movies are still playing in theaters around the world, while you're sitting here gossiping about celebrities to fill the empty hours of housewives' lives if I'm a has-been." "What does that make you a never?" was the studio audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front row had their hands over their mouths in shock. This wasn't just a disagreement anymore. This was character assassination being broadcast live to millions of viewers. Joy's face was turning a deeper shade of red with each passing second. "You think money is everything, don't you? You think because you got lucky and landed a few big roles that makes you some kind of god?" Lucky Ford's voice rose for the first time, and the sound made everyone in the studio flinch. "Lucky lady, I spent years working construction jobs and doing bit parts in terrible movies. Before I got my break, I earned every single role I ever got through hard work and dedication. You want to talk about luck? How about the luck of getting handed a job on national television, despite having no qualifications except a willingness to be cruel to people on camera?" The producers were frantically gesturing from the control booth, trying to signal the host to go to commercial, but Joy was too far gone to notice she'd started this fight, and she was determined to finish it, even if it destroyed her career in the process. "At least I don't phone in my performances," she snarled. "At least when I show up to work I actually try to do something interesting instead of just collecting a paycheck for showing up and mumbling my way through the same tired routine." Ford stepped closer to the panel, and for a moment it seemed like he might actually reach across and grab Joy by the shoulder. His face was flushed with anger, and his hands were trembling slightly at his sides. "Phone it in, you want to see phoning it in? Look around this studio, Joy. Look at this sad excuse for a television show where you sit around all day talking about other people's lives because your own isn't worth discussing. You call that trying? You call that interesting? This is the most pathetic waste of airtime on television. And you're the reason why. Joy shot up from her chair, finally matching Ford's standing position. The two of them faced off across the panel, like gunfighters in an old western, and the tension between them was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "Get out," Joy said, her voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my studio right now. We don't need you here. We don't need your attitude or your insults or your washed-up movie star ego. Your studio?" Ford laughed again, that same cold, humorless sound. "This isn't your studio, Joy. This is a soundstage where they film your little gossip session. You don't own anything here except maybe that chair you've been warming for the last however many years, contributing absolutely nothing to society, except making people feel worse about themselves." The camera operators were getting some of the most dramatic footage ever captured on daytime television. This wasn't just a celebrity interview gone wrong. This was two public figures completely destroying each other on live television, and everyone watching knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. "You know what your problem is?" Harrison Joy's voice was getting higher and more shrill with each word. "You can't handle the fact that someone finally had the guts to tell you the truth about your mediocre career. You're not the hero you play in the movies. You're just another aging actor who can't accept that nobody cares about you anymore." The words hit Forward like physical blows, and his face went completely white for a moment. He looked genuinely hurt, like Joy had found some deep insecurity and driven a knife right into it. But then the hurt transformed into something much more dangerous, a cold fury that seemed to fill the entire studio. With its intensity, the silence that followed Joy's devastating comment about nobody caring about Ford any stretched on for what felt like an eternity. The hurt that had flashed across Ford's face was replaced by something far more terrifying, a cold calculation that suggested he was about to unleash something that would end this confrontation, once and for all. The studio audience held their collective breath, sensing that they were about to witness the climax of this unprecedented television disaster. Ford's voice, when he finally spoke, was so quiet that everyone in the studio had to strain to hear him. But the words that came out carried the weight of 5 decades in Hollywood and the accumulated wisdom of a man who had seen the industry from every possible angle. "You want to know what nobody cares about anymore, Joy? Nobody cares about bitter, talentless people who make their living by attacking others. Nobody cares about washed-up comedians who never had anything funny to say in the first place. And nobody, absolutely nobody, cares about your opinion of my career or anyone else's." Joy opened her mouth to fire back, but Ford held up his hand, and something in his gesture made her actually stop talking for the first time since. The interview began. "I'm not finished. Afidi," Ford continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "You asked me when I last challenged myself as an actor. Let me ask you something, Joy. When was the last time you challenged yourself to be a decent human being? When was the last time you used this platform to build someone up instead of tearing them down? When was the last time you looked in the mirror and asked yourself if you were making the world a better place, or just adding to all the ugliness that's already out there?" The other hosts were completely frozen now, afraid to move or speak, or even breathe too loudly. This had gone so far beyond anything they had ever experienced that they didn't even know how to process what was happening. The camera operators kept rolling, knowing that they were capturing something that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. Joy's hands were shaking now, whether from anger or something else entirely. "You sanctimonious hypocrite," she spat. "You think you're so much better than everyone else. Don't you? You think because you starred in some movies that makes you some kind of moral authority." "Moral authority?" Ford's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. "Joy, I never claimed to be a moral authority. I'm just an actor who's trying to do his job and treat people with basic respect along the way. But apparently basic respect is too much to ask for in your world. Respect has to be earned." Joy shot back, her voice rising to nearly a shout. "And you haven't earned anything, except a reputation for being difficult and demanding on every set you've ever worked on." Ford's laugh this time was different, warmer somehow, like he had just realized something that amused him greatly. "Difficult and demanding. You know what, Joy? You're absolutely right. I am difficult when directors want me to mail in a performance, I am demanding when producers want to cut corners that will hurt the final product. I'm difficult and demanding because I care about the work, because I respect the audience enough to give them my best effort. Every single time he paused, looking directly into the camera for the first time during the entire interview. And you know what else? I'm difficult and demanding when people like you try to tear down everything that others have worked their entire lives to build. So yes, I'm being difficult right now, and I'm going to keep being difficult until you learn to show some basic human decency. Joy was practically vibrating with rage. Now human decency. You want to lecture me about human decency? You're the one who just spent the last 10 minutes insulting me in my career on national television. I'm responding to your attack. Joy, there's a difference. You started this whole thing by trying to humiliate me for no reason other than your own entertainment. Everything I've said has been in response to your deliberate cruelty. But here's the thing that really bothers me about people like you. Ford moved even closer to the panel, and his voice dropped to that whisper again. But somehow it carried more authority than any shout could have managed. You hide behind the idea that you're just asking tough questions or providing honest criticism, but that's not what this is. This is you trying to hurt someone because it makes you feel powerful. This is you using your platform to be cruel because you think it makes for good television. And the worst part is you probably don't even realize how damaged you have to be inside to find joy in causing pain to others. Joy's face crumpled for just a moment, like Ford's words had hit something deep and vulnerable that she usually kept hidden. But then the mask snapped back into place, and she was on the attack again. How dare you try to psychoanalyze me, you pretentious fool. You don't know anything about my life or what I've been through or why I do what I do. You think you can just waltz in here and judge me based on one conversation. One conversation. Ford's voice was incredulous. Joy, this isn't one conversation. This is who you are. This is what you do every single day on this show. You attack people, you mock them. You try to find their weak spots and press on them until they break. And when someone finally stands up to you, you act like you're the victim. The control room was in complete chaos. Now the producers were arguing about whether to cut to commercial, whether to end the interview, whether to call security. But nobody seemed able to make a decision, paralyzed by the unprecedented nature of what they were witnessing. You want to know what I think? Ford continued, his voice building to what was clearly going to be his final statement. I think you're jealous. I think you're bitter, and jealous of everyone who's managed to build something meaningful with their lives while you've spent yours sitting in that chair, gossiping and complaining and contributing nothing positive to the world. Joy was practically shaking with fury now. Jealous of what you're failing. Career, your string of box office disappointments. Your desperate attempts to stay relevant in an industry that's moved on without you. No, Joy, you're jealous of the fact that people remember my work with fondness. You're jealous that when people think of me, they think of characters and stories that brought them joy and excitement and wonder. When people think of you, what do they remember? What have you contributed to the world besides negativity and cruelty? The question hung in the air. Like a challenge, Joy opened and closed her mouth several times, but no words came out for the first time in the entire interview. She seemed to have nothing to say. Ford nodded slowly as if her silence had confirmed everything he suspected. That's what I thought. You know, Joy, I came here today to talk about a movie that I'm proud of, a movie that I hope will entertain people and maybe give them a couple of hours of escape from whatever troubles they're dealing with in their own lives. That's what I do. I try to bring a little bit of magic into the world. He gestured around the studio with obvious disgust. But you take that magic and you grind it up into little pieces and scatter it to the wind. You take the things that bring people joy and you find ways to make them seem small and meaningless and stupid. And for what? For ratings, for attention, for the sick pleasure of watching people squirm. Joy finally found her voice again, but it came out as barely more than a whisper. You can't talk to me like this. You can't come on to my show and attack me like this. Your show, Ford's voice, was building to a crescendo. Now this isn't a show. Joy, this is a public execution disguised as entertainment. This is you and your panel sitting in judgment of everyone who has the misfortune to walk through those doors. Well, I'm not going to sit here and let you execute me for your audience's amusement. He started walking toward the edge of the stage, but then stopped and turned back one final time. You know what the really sad part is? You probably think you won something here today. You probably think. This confrontation makes for great television, but all you've done is show the world exactly who you really are, and trust me, it's not a pretty picture. Joy was on her feet now, pointing at Ford as he walked away. Don't you dare walk away from me. Don't you dare turn your back on me when I'm talking to you. Ford stopped walking but didn't turn around. I'm not walking away from you. Joy, I'm walking away from this toxic environment that you've created. I'm walking away from the kind of television that makes the world an uglier place. And I'm walking away from people who think that cruelty is entertainment. You think you're so much better than us, Joy shouted after him. You think you're above this show, and above me, and above everyone else. Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Big Shot movie star, we don't need you. We never needed you. Ford finally turned around one last time, and when he spoke, his voice was calm again, almost sad. You're right, Joy. You don't need me, but maybe, just maybe, you need to take a long, hard look at what you've become and ask yourself if this is really who you want to be. Because if it is, then I feel sorry for you, I really do. And with that, Harrison Ford walked off the set of The View, leaving behind a stunned studio audience, a group of shell-shocked hosts, and one of the most explosive television moments in daytime history. The cameras kept rolling as Joy stood there pointing at empty air, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. The other hosts finally tried to salvage something from the wreckage, but it was too late. The damage was done, and everyone watching knew they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for decades to come. What did you think of this incredible confrontation between Harrison Ford and Joy Behar? Have you ever seen anything like this on daytime television before? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible celebrity stories that you won't see anywhere else. This is exactly the kind of unfiltered behind-the-scenes drama that shows you what really happens when the cameras are rolling and the gloves come.